Welcome to Reading and Writing Between the Lines, a podcast series about communication skills in the workplace. I'm your host, John Witzman. Join me as I speak with industry professionals and Conestoga faculty and alumni to explore their journeys with reading and writing skills. Follow us as we talk about how communications learning has changed over the years, how these skills are used in a wide range of industries, and the future of workplace communications. Speaking of that, I wanted to come back to something that you were talking about earlier, which was the role of summarizing in this creative process, in this developmental process. And that's a skill that I'm really interested in from a teaching perspective. It's a skill that is difficult to teach and difficult to learn, I think, in an intentional way, this idea of digesting a large body of text or a large body of information and condensing it to the most essential components, stripping away the elements that aren't essential. It's difficult because at the early stages of a learning process, one might not know what is essential and what isn't, right? Somebody who's sitting down to highlight their textbook at an early stage of their learning career might be inclined to highlight that whole page. And then as they turn their page, they have it sopping wet and it's practically see-through because at that moment, everything seems important.
Yep, I remember those days.
Right? I do too.
I was guilty of that as well.
Yeah. And so I'm curious to know whether you have any insights from the other side of that journey, now being clearly attuned to that rather kind of fine-tuned craft of stripping away a body of text or a set of ideas to hold on to only what's essential. Do you recall, what did you learn along the way that got you here? Is it simply something that you take in through osmosis? Are there sort of concrete lessons to be learned along the way?
Yeah, I learned a couple tips throughout my years, which I'm happy to share with anyone who wants to listen.
I'm writing it down with my old-fashioned quill here.
One of them is try to summarize to 10% of what you're reading.
Oh, brilliant. I like that.
So if it's a 100-page document, try to get it down to 10. And how are you going to do that? What are the key concepts that you want to pull into that? How can you reword it? The other thing that I do in one of my many rounds of revision is focus on making things more concise. So did I put two redundant words together that I can cut?
Right.
I literally go through sentence by sentence and I will cut words if I don't need them. So that's like another way of doing it. And then another tactic that's really popular in the PR world is, especially if it's a complicated subject, is how would you explain this to an 8-year-old?
Right.
Right. And guess what? An 8-year-old's not reading a 200-page textbook. So
right.
You need to condense that real tight and real simple. And I think if you can explain it to a child, then it's probably good enough for a website.
And it's important, I think, to point out that the imaginary child in this scenario isn't not smart, right? It's not that you're speaking to an audience who is not intelligent. It's that you're speaking to somebody who is actually quite skilled at stripping things down to their essence and demands that succinctness and that clarity from the people that they communicate, right? That's what they want. They're actually pretty sharp.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we use the child example because it shows like simplifying concepts,
yes.
Difficult concepts. But, also conciseness can also be to a CEO, right? A CEO has a minute? You might get 1 minute of your time. So how are you going to explain a complicated, scenario to a CEO that's probably brilliant, but it's got 1 minute?
This is a really fruitful area for us to chat to because we've heard this in many conversations that we've had on this podcast. People's clients, people's coworkers, people's managers and employers all seem to be very busy and
Yep.
and really do demand and require not out of impertinence, but just out of necessity. They need that succinctness. Do you recall failing to deliver that succinctness at times? Do you remember getting something? Yeah. What was that like?
So it's funny that you say that. I remember doing a personality thing in my first role out of school. And the personality thing showed that I am very detailed. and I need details. That's how I digest information. I need to take in a lot of information. That's how I make really good decisions. And my director, who I was reporting into, was the opposite. She doesn't want the details. Just give her what she needs to know. And so when we did this personality thing, it kind of sunk in of like, oh my God, I've been doing the opposite of what I'm supposed to be doing with her. So that was a huge shift for me in understanding that there's different types of people.
Right.
And you need to kind of adapt your communication style to their style.
Yeah.
And when it comes to more senior folks, no matter what their personality is, they've only got a few minutes. So how do you really condense what you need to say in order to get what you want?
Right.
In a sense. Yeah.
And I think that you're speaking to strategy here, right?
Yes.
That communicating is sort of part of a larger process of or project of thinking, that of being intentional in the world, and not to get too sort of abstract, but in order for you to come into that meeting or to deliver that one pager, you would have needed to have done a lot of preliminary thought and review in order to not just strip away what's not essential, but also to be clear about what it is that you're actually trying to achieve, what they want, right? Long-term implications of whatever it is that you're proposing. That takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like you need key messages for your own emails or your own conversations. Yeah.
And that marks the end of another episode of Reading and Writing Between the Lines, a podcast hosted by me, John Witzman, on behalf of the Communications Department and School of Interdisciplinary Studies at Conestoga College. You can find other episodes of this series on our YouTube channel, Reading and Writing Between the Lines. Stay tuned for more episodes. Thanks for listening.